Okay, today let's cover the common used boat problems and what to watch out for. And in general, these kind of go both ways between power boating and sailing. Obviously, when it comes to sailing, you have a few more things to consider, which is the mast and the sails. Buying a used boat can be a pretty cost-effective way of enjoying boating, but it also comes with its own set of risks. Just like buying a used car, boats can suffer from wear and tear over time, and certain problems may not be immediately visible to the untrained eye. Why it's always smart to get a surveyor. So what we'll cover is some common issues found in used boats and provide you some guidance on how to identify them. As always, if you're interested in some boating education, which you should do, check out Nautic Ed and their sailing or powerboat courses, which will be linked in the show notes. So first issue that generally people run into: engine issues. Don't get it twisted. The engine is the heart of any boat. It doesn't matter if it's a sailboat, and for power boats, it's especially true, right? And problems with the engine are always expensive and difficult to fix. Especially on sailboats, those engines can be in such confined spaces that like no service business actually wants to work on them because it's going to suck so hard, or they're going to charge you a ton. So some common engine problems: corrosion, right? So a good chunk of boats are in saltwater environments, and metal and saltwater don't really go so well. And so if you're in the market to look at a used boat, always check for signs of rust, especially, around the exhaust or engine mounts. Good plan of action is to look at how the engine looks. If you're interested in buying a new boat, just immediately go look at the engine. And if the engine looks like it's in good shape, then generally the rest of the boat is going to be in good shape. Next common engine problem is a poor maintenance history. So basically, if the engine hasn't been properly maintained, it's a ticking time bomb. So always ask for service records to ensure that the engine has been serviced, including the oil change, the filters, and winterization. Another common engine problem is low compression. Low engine compression is a sign of worn out engine parts, which lead to reduced performance and even engine failure. Some people do it. I never did it, but you can basically hire someone to come in and do a compression test to check the engine beforehand. And, this kind of goes without saying, but always ask to run the engine before purchasing a used boat. And then listen for unusual noises, knocking or sputtering, and observe if the engine smokes excessively. Okay, the second major issue that you can run into with used boats is hull damage. So it's best to think of the hull as the body of the boat, and any structural damage can affect its performance and safety on the water. So cracks, blistering, or any type of damage to the hull can result in some costly repairs and even compromise the boat's seaworthiness. I've seen boats whose hull was so shifted that the railings on either end were off by a foot. So keep your eye out. Now, some common gel coat hull problems are gel coat cracks. So these are small cracks in the gel coat. They're pretty common. They can be large or deep. They can indicate some structural type things, also some UV damage, stress on the boat. There's a lot of boats that have gel coat cracks. Blisters and osmosis. Now, there are some boats that are kind of legendary for that, the materials that were used, but basically the blister is caused by osmosis, which is where the water penetrates the outer layers of the fiberglass. Blister repair is a time-consuming and expensive fix, so you definitely want to check that beforehand. Also, hull delamination. So delamination occurs when layers of the boat's fiberglass separate, which ultimately weakens the boat structure. This can be identified by tapping the hull and listening for a hollow or dull sound, which indicate a separation. Again, the pro tip here is to hire an inspector before you go and actually purchase a used boat. Okay, the next major system failures are electrical problems. Especially if the boat has been neglected or exposed to harsh marine environments. Electrical systems in boats are complex at times, and the wiring weaves into so many dark and unknown areas of the boat. It can be a huge challenge to get to. but you're definitely going to want to take a look at the navigation lights and the navigation system, the engine controls, the bilge pumps, all of that. So some common electrical issues are corroded wiring. Again, we're in a saltwater environment, so that's highly corrosive. Boats that are exposed to this type of salt water over a long period of time can turn green, and the wires can fray and result in poor connections. Another thing is battery problems, right? So batteries degrade over time, and a boat with old or weak batteries may have trouble starting, but it's relatively easy to change. Non-functioning electronics. It seems to be the problem with seemingly all used boats, including my own. So, over time with the salt air and corroded wiring and just general malfunctions, some electronics just won't work. Then you have to replace them, and replacing electronics is no easy task, and it's also pretty expensive. Now, as we get into more of the powerboat side of common issues, propeller and lower unit damage. So the lower unit or stern drive and the propeller are critical for the boat moving forward through the water. And damage here can significantly impact the performance and also suggest that the boat either run aground or struck an object with its propeller or lower unit. So be aware of bent or chipped propellers. Also be aware of lower unit corrosion. A lower unit is often submerged in the water, so it makes it prone to these corrosion environments. With the lower units, they generally have transmission fluid in it. And so if you look at the transmission fluid and it's like a milky white, that water has penetrated, you're going to have to replace that lower unit. Now, the last major problem with used boats is steering system wear. So you never want to be in a situation where you go to turn the wheel and nothing happens. So that's what we're talking about here. Basically, if you're looking at a used boat, check out the entire steering system, including the cables, or if it's a hydraulic system, for any wear or malfunctions. Some common steering problems: stiff or sticking steering, right? So stiff steering indicates corrosion in the cables or a failure of the hydraulic system, makes it difficult to turn the wheel, signals damage to the steering components. Another problem is hydraulic leaks. So boats with hydraulic steering systems should be checked for fluid leaks, which can result in steering failure over time. So inspect all that. Loose or worn cables. So the cable steering system can be worn over time, leading to slack or imprecise steering. So always check those cables. And, that's really about it. Again, it is very important to bring in a surveyor for a used boat. And there's a few associations out there that you can search for marine surveyors. And another pro tip I'll tell you is never get a used boat for free. All right. If the boat is for free, it's usually going to be the most expensive boat that you ever purchase. So just don't do it. Just avoid free boats. This episode is brought to you by Nautic Ed. So if you're in the market for some educational resources, they have multimedia online education and some instructors that can teach you the ropes. So do check them out. A link is going to be in the show notes.